In this video, we're going to talk about how Spotify editorial and Spotify user playlists aren't really all they're cracked up to be. And essentially relying on these two playlists to promote your music as your main strategy is kind of a way to guarantee failure. And one of the reasons for this is that the engagement numbers from these playlists is pretty awful. And a lot of people don't realize it until they get into it. Now, another aspect of this is that editorial playlists often don't give the numbers that a lot of people expect, and algorithmic playlists actually perform a lot better. And in this video, I'm going to show you a lot of the stats to prove that. Now, first, I kind of have to break this video up into two halves because we have editorial playlists and user playlists. And so first, we're going to talk about editorial, where I'm going to show you my stats for what I've gotten from editorial. I'm going to show you another artist that's on a much bigger scale than me and how their editorial playlists have compared to algorithmic playlists. Then we're going to jump over to the user side, where I'm going to show you how the engagement rates of those playlists stack up compared to other methods of promotion. All right, so let's dive in and talk about editorial playlists. So this is my Spotify for artist, Andrew Southworth. That's me. Feel free to look me up on Spotify. I'm in my editorial section. I'm looking at all my data since 2015. So this is like the lifetime of my Spotify. I have, and actually this might be a good point of comparison or a reference point to show you, I've released a lot of music, right? I think 70 songs total, but there's 3 albums worth of material, so probably 50-ish releases. And then also I didn't pitch all of them to editorial. I only pitched probably 30 to editorial. So that kind of gives you perspective going into this. Now, if we look at the actual editorial numbers, since 2015, I've gotten roughly 50,000 streams from editorial. And by the way, only one song of mine was ever selected for editorial out of those 30-ish pitches that I've done. So right off the bat, it's kind of a lottery, right? Every day, 40,000 plus tracks are uploaded to Spotify, and you're competing. And if you're in a genre like hip hop, pop, EDM, you're facing way more competition than you're in a much more specific niche. So 50,000 streams total. Now this playlist Bass Arcade, you might be thinking, well, maybe you just get added to small playlist. And in the case of Ruthless Warrior, this is some relatively small playlist. But Bass Arcade, if I pull it up here on Spotify, this is a playlist with 1 million followers or 1 million likes. This is significant, right? Like this isn't some small playlist. And my song was on this playlist for a month. Like literally it was on there for a month, and it got 50,000 streams on a 1 million-ish follower playlist. I think it had 850,000 back when I did it, somewhere around there. And I actually made a video about it. You can check right here after you're done watching this video. So 50,000 roughly. Now if we compare that to algorithmic numbers, Release Radar, and this is listeners column, by the way. So listeners here, streams here, listeners here, streams here. So just from Release Radar alone, 37,000. That's creeping up on Bass Arcade. And then radio, almost 80,000. That's vastly surpassing all of my editorial activity. And Discover Weekly absolutely dominating my editorial playlist coverage. So like for me as myself as an artist, it's like not even a close comparison. The algorithmic playlists are much more valuable. But you might be wondering, well, okay, Andrew, well, you only have X amount of monthly listeners. I think now I'm at like 30-ish something thousand monthly listeners. Things are always going up and down with the seasons and when I do releases. How does this apply to an artist that has 500,000 monthly listeners? And I can show that to you. So what we're looking at here is the same page for an artist with roughly 500,000 monthly listeners. I think they have a little over 500,000 monthly listeners, 1.5 million streams per month or so. I'm going to blur out a bunch of stuff on the screen just to keep them anonymous. But we're looking at all their playlist stuff since 2015 as well. You can see right here. And let's compare their editorial placements. So they get a lot of editorial coverage. I added up roughly all of their stuff because they've been on 52 playlists. And just to be generous, let's call it 7 million total streams from editorial. And that's, I believe, is rounding up a good amount. But now if we look at the algorithmic playlists, like this playlist here is 2.5 million. That's that's surpassed by Discover Weekly and Release Radar alone, combining those two. So if we look at that total 7 million, your daily mix is surpassing it pretty significantly, and radio is like tripling it, right? So, their lifetime of their account, they've gotten way more from radio, way more from your daily mix than they have from editorial playlists. And this is a relatively large artist, right? So even on my scale, it still applies. Now, one kind of learning point, I guess, to point out from this that I never noticed until now is that for me, radio was like the second or third one down, and Discover Weekly was the most. For this artist, radio's number one, then your daily mix, then Discover Weekly. And Discover Weekly is not too much more than Release Radar. So, I don't know if this is a size thing or just like depending on how an artist has existed, like what playlist will get the most numbers. But you can see in this case as well, like the algorithmic stuff just is much more significant. All right, so now we're going to take a look at the user playlist side. In general, user playlists, they're kind of risky because you never really know how that person grew their playlist. So anytime you pitch to a user playlist, you want to make sure you can actually see the playlist ahead of time that you're getting on, and you can take a look at like the data and who's made it. So don't send your money to a company that's going to put you in a random playlist, because you never know anything about the playlist. Even when you can see the playlist though, it can be very tricky to detect if they're just botting their playlist. Like essentially it's impossible to truly detect it because from the outside you don't have enough data. And even when you're on a playlist, you really have no way to know for sure. You might see, oh, all these streams are coming from the United States, UK, Canada, like generally safe countries, quote unquote. But people could just run bots from those countries. Like bots don't have to come from like Nigeria or something. They can come from anywhere in the world. And in fact, companies charge more for bots from the US because they know that some people will pay for it to make themselves look more legit. So that's the kind of big risk factor with user playlists in general. I wanted to point that out first. But now let's actually look at the data, because basically back in 2019, I was just trying out everything I could possibly think of to promote my music. And I tried out a lot of playlisting services, and you can actually check this video here to kind of see my history of how I've been marketing my music over the past two-ish years or so, and also my general history period when it comes to music marketing. And ideally, in this page here, so I'm looking at all my music for since 2015. I think it used to show you the saves over time. For some reason, Spotify you can't look at like all time and see saves, because that would have been very helpful here. But we can't do that, unfortunately. So we're going to be looking at the ratio of streams to listeners as a metric of quality. In general, like if someone listens to your song 5 times, that's much better than if they listen to your song 2 times, right? So we're going to use that as a metric here. So all these songs at the top, like if we divide these numbers up, people listen on average 5 times. This one, they listen on average a little more than 5 times. This one, they listen on average roughly 2.7 times or so. This one is like 5. This one is roughly 5. And all of these songs, essentially almost all the ones from here upwards, aside from this one here, were done with Facebook ads as their main marketing method. This song was done via playlisting back in 2019, and it has a listen rate of about less than 2. So it's like a 1.6 or something. I'm just quickly doing mental math. This is my most recent song that I've put out, and it already has like a 3.5. So just looking at these two numbers, it's pretty clear like the playlist stuff doesn't get you very good streams per listener. Now, if we look at Moonlight, this one's a bit better. This is like almost a 3, roughly. If we look at Triggered, this is a 2. Neutron was done with Facebook ads as well, but this was my first one ever. Back to You, playlisting, this is a 3. You was Facebook ads, all of my second one ever, but this is a 3. Our Love, playlisting, 2. All We Have Is Time, playlisting, 1.6. Right, I'm just dividing these numbers. And so in general, also this one playlisting, 1.2. This one was Facebook ads. Very badly performing song though, but it still got a 3. So like the quality metric in terms of streams per listener, when you compare playlists, like submitting to user playlists compared to Facebook ads, is the playlisting as a horrible stream per listen rate. Now, there's a few metrics I can't adequately show here, but if I go to audience and we look at since 2015, I started doing Facebook ads to promote my music roughly like here-ish. It's probably when I started making the first video, and you notice that this is when my first campaign that I did with conversions, I believe, roughly May. And so you can see the massive like spike that happened here. I'm not really focusing on that in this video. We're talking about user playlists. Everything in 2019 was playlist promotion. Except for this spike, I hired a different company that I'm pretty sure they just used bots, even though they said everything was legit. But you can see like nothing ever really took off here, right? Like everything was kind of just like this insanely small numbers compared to what's happening now. And I can also look at followers since 2015. So basically everything in 2019 was playlisting. And ignore this big spike, because this was that company that I won't name here that I hired that said they were doing real promotion. They get a jump of about 300 followers or 250 followers exactly. And then 6 months later, I lost 250 followers. So that gets negated. So basically, like, all this time, thousands of dollars in playlisting and pitching to get maybe at best 500 followers. Whereas with the Facebook ads, all of this. Now, Facebook ads is obviously expensive too, but even like in the playlisting world, spending thousands of dollars, getting almost no followers, like you get much more bang for your buck in terms of followers when it comes to that. And never mind the social media followers and stuff like that, and the kind of side effects. When you do playlist promotion on Spotify, it always stays in Spotify. When you run ads to your music, you'll get a crossover to Apple Music, YouTube, social media, etc. Now, this video isn't about Facebook ads, but it's impossible for me to talk about Spotify playlisting given my experience without comparing it to the other data I've done. So you can see in general that the user playlist, they don't really do anything. And like this, I have no way to prove this, but every time I ran one of these campaigns, I would get on these playlists for roughly a month, and then I would get kicked off. After I was kicked off, like I might have shot up to like 20,000 monthly listeners, and then I would just be right back down every single time. And I don't know if there's a good way to, there isn't really a good way to show that in the stats. So that's that. Now we can look a little bit more into the specific songs here. If I go here, this is the number of playlists my song Sunrise is on. This song's been out for less than 2 months now, I believe. Yeah, less than 2 months. And it's on 932 playlists. These aren't playlists that I pitched to get on or paid to get on or anything. So these are my playlists, or sorry, this one's my playlist. The rest of them are random people that heard the song, aside from these algorithmic playlists. And actually, let me do since 2015. The song's on 1,074 playlists. It's been out for less than 2 months. And these are just people that like the song and add it to their own personal playlist, right? And that's why when I look at stats here, listeners' own playlist and library. This is people listening to the song in their library or in their own playlist. When you do a playlisting thing, so like this song was promoted with playlisting, since 2015, only 496 playlists. And this song came out over 2 years ago. So 2 months, over 1,000 playlists, and 2 years, 500 playlists. So you get on way more playlists when you don't use playlist promotion. Just because when people go on a playlist, they're not like looking at every artist and song that plays and adding it to their playlist. They're kind of just picking a playlist and listening. They might never even see your artist name, right? And if we look at the stats here, most of the streams are coming from other listeners' playlists. And like a lot of the streams this song has gotten is because this song is in my radio. People see my other songs and they check out this song. So prior to me having good numbers, these stats would have been even worse for this song. But because I'm also doing other promotion, there's some crossover into the song, which is another downside of playlisting, is that it's mostly just going to help that one song. There's going to be very little crossover into your other music. So I want to clarify something. I'm not saying that you shouldn't pitch to editorial playlists, and I'm not saying that there's no reason you would submit to user playlists. I submit every song I do to editorial playlists, because even though it's a lottery gamble and the playlist you get on might be small, they might be big, and the engagement isn't great, it's still free streams at the end of the day, and it's definitely something you can share in social media, get all that clout you can, brag about it to your community. It's still worth pitching every song 4 to 5 weeks ahead of the release. Like, definitely do it. User playlists, but also don't rely on it because it's such a lottery gamble, right? Now, user playlists, don't like obsess over it. Don't make it the cornerstone of your promotion strategy for your song. But I'm not saying don't do it at all. Every time I put out a song, I might spend $50 in some MidHub credits and pitch it to some playlists a few days or a week after I start doing my ads to promote my song. And the reason why I don't start at day one is because I don't want to like corrupt the data of my Facebook ads with the data from the playlist. Because if you have two promotion services at the same time, it's hard to tell like what's coming from what. So I'll kind of stagger them for a few days so that I can kind of look and be like, okay, the Facebook ad campaign is going well. Now the MidHub stuff starts and I can see the impact of that a little bit more clearly. But still, it's only like $50 compared to like the 1,000 I might put into the song with Facebook ads. So, it can be worth doing playlisting. Just be very mindful of the companies you're using. SubmitHub and Playlist Push are legit. I recommend SubmitHub because at the end of the day, it's way more affordable for an artist. Playlist Push is super expensive, but they're legit. It's just a marketplace to pitch to playlists. SubmitHub, you can vet the playlist yourself and decide which ones you want to be on a little bit more clearly than with Playlist Push, where they just pitch your stuff automatically for you. Don't hire a company that's just going to pitch them on their own, where you never get to see the playlists, and they guarantee anything. If they're guaranteeing anything, just avoid them, because you can't really guarantee anything when it comes to marketing. So if you want to see the video where I show how I got my first editorial placement and how I pitch stuff, check out that video right there. And if you want to see how I got 37,000 streams in the first 3 weeks of my newest song, Sunrise, check out that video down there. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next video. Bye.